Take it away.
Hi everybody, thanks for joining us for our presentation. I'm Miles Kirk.
I'm Chris Daniels.
I'm Cameron Brown.
I'm Jesse Stewart.
And I'm Pat Jaworski.
Our company was Wentworth Industrial Cleaning Solutions. They compete in the janitorial maintenance chemical market. And just to give you guys a little bit of background about the company, we have a couple facts written down right here. So as I said, they compete in the janitorial maintenance chemical market. Wentworth Industrial Cleaning Supplies is located in Stuttgart, Germany. And they have about 2,000 manufacturers providing both private and national labels that make up 4 segments of the entire chemical solutions market. In 2012, according to trade association estimates, the total market for Wentworth is roughly 2.5 billion euros. And Wentworth total sales volume is approximately 1.3 billion. So they're taking pretty good control of the available market. And WICS addresses 75% of the market's product needs with a line of high-end quality products. The composition of WICS products line is as follows. Special purpose cleaners make up 46% of their products, air fresheners 9%, general purpose cleaners 16%, disinfectants 15%, and other 14%. The janitorial maintenance market is highly fragmented, and no firm, including WICS, has more than 10% market share. J. Randall Griffith, VP of Marketing for WICS, has been directed to determine the factors stunning the growth of the company and to institute a program that will facilitate further expansion.
Alright, so some of the key issues that we have here at WICS, they're experiencing a slowdown in growth. Also, they're not keeping pace with the industry sales growth. The industry sales are a lot higher and WICS are down a lot. So to kind of combat this, and some of our recommendations is to add 2 new sanitary supply distributors to each of the area managers. We feel this will increase the workload a little bit for them, and also if we do have to hire more area managers, that's going to increase our training and our hiring costs. However, that increases market development when we're adding these new SSDs to each of them. So that's definitely going to help increase sales a lot. Another of our recommendations is to incentivize the current area managers and these distributors, to kind of get a little good friendly competition in there. And also that'll help, bring in a lot more business as well. But that comes with the downside that there's more pressure and frustration to them if they don't happen to, win these competitions a lot more and kind of get those incentives. However, before we do implement those incentives, we want to find out what incentives to give them. We don't want to give them something that they're not going to actually compete for. We want something that actually they'll want. Another of our recommendations is to add an economy-based product line. Right now, they're only in the premium and average product lines, but with those products, their price is a little bit too high. We recommend definitely keeping those, get those costs a little bit more down, get some more customers to buy those. But also, we want them to have products in the whole market and not just 75% of the premium or the average product lines. So by doing that, that'll decrease your cost of goods sold, it's going to increase your sales volume, your market penetration, and your market share, which is all good, and hopefully we can bump up some of their sales.
Area managers largely feel dissatisfied in the company. They feel as though the role is underutilized and underappreciated, and that with some revision and some changes to their role, that the role could be more effective and could be better used at WICS. Right now, we're going to go over what some of the problems they have in the company are. Right now, one of their main problems is that they spend 80% of their time keeping old accounts. That's fine. That's important. Companies need to do that, but those sales don't keep them rolling. They don't value those sales as much at WICS, and thus this is a large. They think this 80% of their time could largely be spent elsewhere. Another problem they have is the number of cold calls they make has gone down. A lot of their business is based on cold calls and making cold calls, and if they don't have those calls to make, then they don't make a lot of their money. And so those going down has been a huge issue ever since they've been dealing with the SSDs. Another problem is the incentives. AMs are largely paid in salary and incentives, and without the incentive program being as good as it can be, the area managers won't be as successful at their job and won't be as motivated to be as successful at their job. And so we think that the incentive program should possibly be edited or gotten rid of, just depending on how they decide to change their sales position. Another problem that the area managers are dealing with is that they don't like that their role stresses new gallon sales, cold calls, cold calls on end users, and product demonstrations. These sort of things they don't like about it because it's very stringent, it's not very flexible. Their role is largely outlined and explained, and they think that if they were allowed to be more flexible and change their position more, then they would be more successful in their sales position. They think they dislike being taught to check boxes rather than to creatively produce, and that's like a huge issue for them. They have little ability to impact their own success. They don't make any commission off that. That's a huge issue. They're just making all their money off incentive and salary, so we think that's one of their problems. And they largely believe that the cold call process is pointless. Even though they're making less and that's a problem, they think the process in general is pointless. Okay, so that's one slide. So here you can see a breakdown of the area manager's time and how it's spent. You can see this is the 80% that they spend keeping current accounts. You can see here they travel with SSD, assist SSD with product demonstrations and new product introductions, and training SSD. While only 20% of their time is spent elsewhere, 10% in administrative affairs, and 10% making cold calls on end users and SSDs. And you can see that the area managers are just incredibly, they're not satisfied with this at all, and they believe that this time specifically in this area could be much more well divided and better organized in order for them to be more successful. So these are what we believe that WICS could do in order to fix some of their area manager problems. We believe first that you could redefine the role of area managers so that they spend more time on new account developing work. This is huge. This is one of the things that the area managers have largely complained of and have been working on. They've been largely unhappy with at the old company, and so this is just one of the first things you could do in order to make your area managers much happier at their job. Another thing you could do is possibly provide more incentive programs. A lot of the money that area managers make is on the incentive programs, and right now there's only a few. And so the more you introduce, the more money they can make, and the happier they'll be at their job. But this also puts a lot of pressure on the employees. So we also could see removing that and possibly just allowing them to make commission, just like regular salesmen would be, and perhaps allowing them to establish new accounts and new roles and allow them to be more successful at their job. Another thing we think that should happen immediately is that the area manager role should be just redefined on a whole. Area managers have been just largely unhappy with their role as general. They feel as though they're lackeys. They feel as though they're chauffeurs, that they're largely just held to the rules, that they can't do any of their role. There's no flexibility at their job. And so we think that the job should be redefined just to allow them to sort of go with the flow, allow them to work on their own, how they see that they should sell to their customer, and just allow them to be more flexible. Another thing that we do think that should happen in order for the area managers to be more successful is we should provide them with more incentive to get repeat business, because that is what the largest part of their job is doing. And while we do want to change that, if they're still doing that, we think there should be more incentives for them to keep doing that if that's going to be part of the job. And lastly, we believe for area managers that the cold call process should be revised. As it stands, the way it works, they just basically get new business, and then that new business is lost pretty quickly because the distributors have no incentives to keep on the cold call the new customers. And so until that process is revised and changed, there's no incentives for these area managers to do that. So the cold call process needs to be revised in order for area managers to be much more successful at WICS.
So our last major area of concern with WICS is their relationship and their tactics used with their distributors. Their distributors have ran into a lot of issues in a lot of areas with WICS that they're unhappy. The first would be the business tactics that WICS use. WICS tends to come on very heavily and aggressively. As well, they do not communicate very much. They're kind of in to get the sale and don't really care about much else except for getting the sale. As well, after they get the sale and they get their distributor to actually sign a contract, they have really poor communication afterwards. It seems that once that contract is signed, they kind of don't care. They have their distributor locked in a contract, and that's good enough for them. The other part would be for distributors, there is a very high buy-in. This doesn't give newer or smaller distributors a chance to really test the product. They either have to be all in on it or not at all. So what we would recommend for WICS is possibly looking to lower that buy-in, giving smaller distributors and other companies that don't have as big of funds a chance to, help them out and distribute for them. As well, with their poor communication, I would recommend either use the sales reps you have to maintain better communications, or even get a team that specifically works on communications. This would help, since their problem right now is growth. A lot of that comes through word of mouth, if people like WICS or not, and this seems to be one of the major public areas where people can read reviews from distributors and find, wow, they're not that great in that area, let's not go with them. So if they have somebody to maintain that communication and help them through the process, as well, or a little nicer in the buying process, I think this would make distributors a lot more happy and allow them to grow their business.
Alright, to summarize it all up, our recommendations for Wentworth Industrial cleaning supplies would be to add 2 new supply sanitary distributors to each area manager, to motivate current area managers and supply sanitary distributors with incentives, to add economy-based products and expand their premium lines so that they can cover commercial and residential uses. That'll bring a lot more of the market share for them. To lower buy-ins and increase communication with distributors. So they just need to do that, obviously, and to redefine the area manager role, and maybe rewrite the job description so that they can redefine the incentive programs and everything else that the area managers need and that they were looking for to fix the problems.